Well, Innocent Roses, and this is our deliverable. In this presentation, you're going to have Ross Joan and Innocent Musiaka doing the presentation. Otherwise, the two other of our team members are Derek Lee and Jeff Solberg. All right. We'll just go ahead and give you a little bit of a background here. So Valencia is a company that is built from ground up by two brothers, Patrick and Frank. It is a state qualified highway contractor based in the state of Indiana. The company has benefited from the founders' prior industry experience coupled with extremely low overheads from their operations. The major client is the state of Indiana Highway Division, which accounts for 90% of the business. In a good year, the company would have 45 road building projects. Now, kind of moving on to the challenges that are facing Valencia, we noticed that there are a couple of them. The main one is actually keeping track of compliance to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, presentation standards. This is an important part because failure to have the qualification disqualifies the company from bidding on the state projects. And the qualifications are 10% of the job has to be done by significant minority women or other specified minority in that criteria. They're also facing an issue with keeping track of their employees' payroll. They also have an issue with maintaining the records for their property, plant, and equipment. And this is going to help them a lot once they have a database management system because they'll be able to keep track of what equipment is being used where and by what employee. Also, the database management system will also help them keep track of their service records. And the bottom line here is the exponential growth experienced by Valencia is the main cause of the need of a database management system. So the solutions that will be brought by this system, the system will help in solving anomalies like insertion, manipulation, deletion. The database management system will also help in reducing redundancy. It will also ease in communication within the business and keep better track of employees' activities and engagements. Now, for us to be able to come up with an ideal database management system, we have to figure out what information to be included. Fundamentally, we needed to come up with the foundational entities, and when we dug deep, we came up with the following for the foundational entities: employee, job site, piece of equipment, vehicle, material, tools, suppliers, and rates per skill. We also went ahead and identified the associative entities, and the two that we came up with were hours worked and the EEOC compliance. Now we're going to move ahead with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Innocent. I will now continue to talk about the tables in detail as well as their relationships with each other. Now let's look at the first table. It is the earning per skill table with the primary key of employee ID and skills classification. This table purpose is to get the employee and their skill sets, and then basically round up how many hours and how much they made per that skill. Now let's go to the next table. This one is your payroll table, and it has a primary key, employee ID, and date. And this one is meant to pull in like the skill category and total up to how much an employee actually made overall their total wage. Okay. And this next one is the employee table with the primary key of employee ID. And this one is also very special because it has your supervisor to see who is the supervisor in there with your ethnicity and your sex, along with details about this employee. And next one is your assignment table. And primary keys are your employee ID, your project ID, and your skill classification. And this pulls your employee ID, the employee person, basically, and the project you worked in, along with what skill classification they used. And then it totals the amount of hours worked for that particular employee. Next one is your pay rate. Pay rate table has a primary key of skill classification, and the skill classification then has a particular attribute that is the rate of how much it costs just for that particular skill. Now this next table is your estimated hours per skill, and its primary keys are your project ID and your skill classification. This one pulls your project ID of which project and what skill classification was performed, and then it estimates the hours that was based in that project, and then it would try to figure out what is needed for the minority of that 10% of the skill set. Well, it needs to be a 10% of the overall estimated hours for that particular skill. Then this other table here is the tool tracking table, and the primary key for this is your item ID and your employee ID and your project ID. This table helps for your particular employee, who is this employee, and the item that is being taken out, and then the project it came from, and it allows the employee to check it in and check it out so that we know who had the item and when it was last returned. So it helps us track where the tools are going. This is the zip table, and the primary key is your zip code. So basically just location of your zip code. And this is your job site table with your primary key as your project ID. It contains obviously your project name, the employees that work in there, if it's a state project, if it's completed or inspected, and then next one is your supplier table, and the primary key is your vendor ID. This contains details about your supplier. Then this next one is your inventory table, and the inventory table has the primary key of the item ID, and this is actually a super type with the subtype being equipment, material, and tool, which I'll talk about in the next couple slides here. This one will contain descriptions of that particular inventory, its measurements, and when it was purchased or required, and what type of item it is. And then this here is your subtype table equipment with the primary key of the item ID, and this is basically keeping maintenance of your equipment of its last maintenance date and then its next coming date, so you know when you're supposed to inspect it and when if you're expired. And then it also contains your ownership type, if you own it or not. And the next one is your material. This is also a subtype of inventory, and it has the Obviously, the primary key is item ID, and it keeps counts of all the materials, how much they cost, and which vendor it came from. Then lastly, this subtype is tools table, and the primary key is your item ID, and this contains the attribute of the type of tool it is. Now here is an image of the overall relationship of all the tables. We're going to focus on each part, and then eventually go through the whole entire relationship here. Let's look at your earnings per skill. Here, as you can see, in earnings per skill, it is 0 to many assignments, but the assignment can only have one earning per skill. And then the earnings per skill can have one employee, but the employees can have 0 to many earning per skill. So the employee can have different types of skills. They don't have to have just one or 0. And then the earnings per skill can have only one pay rate, but the pay rate can have 0 to many earnings per skill. So each earning per skill can have a different type of pay rate. And then the earnings per skill can have only one payroll, but the payroll can have 0 to many earnings per skill based on the employee. So the employee can have many earning per skill. So now let's go to the payroll. So the payroll can have only one employee, but the employee can have 0 to many payroll. Now let's go to the employee, which is the focal point. The employee can have 0 to many assignments, but the assignments can only have one employee in there. And then if you could see down here, the employee can have 0 to many tool tracking, so they can have like a bunch of tools, but only one type of tool tracking can only belong to one employee. Then the employee can have one zip code, but the zip code can have 0 to many employees. Then an assignment, the assignment can have only one job site, but the job site can have 0 to many assignments within that job site. And the pay rate can have 0 to many assignments, but the assignment can only have one pay rate. And then the pay rate can also have 0 many estimated hours per skill, but the estimated hours per skill can only have one pay rate. Now we've gone through these. Let's go to estimated hours per skill, and the estimated hours per skill can have only one job site, but one job site. But the job site can have 0 to many estimated hours per skill, because there could be different types of skills at this job location, site location. And then let's go to zip. So zip can have 0 to many employees, but many employees can only have one zip code, and job site can only have one zip code, but the zip code can have many job sites. And then there's this tool tracking. Actually, let's wait for that one. Let's look at the supplier. The supplier can have one zip code, but the zip code can have 0 to many supplier. And if you look, the supplier can have many materials, but the materials should only, one particular group of materials should only come from a supplier. And if you look at this tool tracking again, this one can have only one inventory. The inventory can have 0 to many tool tracking. So now, if you look at inventory, inventory has a super and a subtype. Obviously, inventory can be of a equipment type, a material type, or a tool type, and it just depends, I guess, which inventory you're looking at. So if you're looking at equipment, then obviously it will keep track of your equipment, and then looking at material, keep track of your material. If you're looking at tools, it'll keep track of the tools. And that is all for this relationship here. Let's go to our next slide. Now, what are the benefits? Well, first off, we're saving hours of time because we're doing less data entry. You only have to enter data once for the entity, and then the database will then automate the whole process. So all you got to do is enter in your employee and where they're working at, and it should automate that for you instead of manually doing all the hard labor to get your details. And then you can manipulate and enter or delete your data a lot faster from there with the screen for entry. And then you can also pull reports for business questions, or like making sure that you are compliant with the EEOC standards, or just if you're making paying the amount of wages, just keeping track of important data. And then the other ones are the database to keep track of the compliance for the EOC standards. Database can be able to track compliance to your equipment, making sure that they're still operating, keeping track of your payroll so that it can then look at pulling all the skill classifications and putting them totaling them together and getting the correct taxation to the wages, and then basically getting your equipment maintenance correctly and on time, and planning for the future basically. And then your tools will be more organized and be in not lost, and in the correct job site locations, and giving people accountability so that they are not just using equipment and not taking care of their equipment. And overall, it will improve the performance and allow the company to grow, and that's what they need. That should be it. Thank you very much.